January 3rd, 2026, 2 a.m. 7 explosions tear through Caracas. U.S. forces strike. Within 30 minutes, President Nicolas Maduro and his wife are aboard the USS Iwo Jima, bound for a Manhattan courtroom. By January 5th, he stands before a federal judge, facing narco-terrorism charges. The world erupts. Russia condemns. China protests. Streets fill with chaos. But beneath the breaking news, beneath the political storms, there's another Venezuela. One that's been here for 2 billion years. One that doesn't care about presidents or politics. A land where waterfalls fall from heights that turn water into mist before it reaches the ground. Where mountains older than bones rise like forgotten gods. Where the Caribbean collides with the Amazon and neither wins. This is that Venezuela. The one that survives everything. The one the world forgot to see. "979 meters. Angel Falls doesn't just drop, it dissolves. Water launches from Tepui's summit and vanishes into mist long before reaching the jungle floor below. Stand at the base and you feel it first, a cool ghost drifting through humid air. Then you see it, a silver thread descending from clouds that never fully clear. The Pemon people called it Kerepakupai Maru for thousands of years before aviator Jimmy Angel crash-landed atop the tepui in 1937. But names don't capture what this place does to you, the silence beneath the roar. The weight of knowing this cascade has been falling unchanged since before language existed. In a country where everything fractures, Angel Falls is stone and sky refusing to break. "3 million hectares of earth that forgot time exists. Rivers the color of strong tea flow over pink granite polished for millennia. Tepuis rise like the edges of worlds, flat-topped mountains 2 billion years old. Each summit is an island in the sky, where species evolved in complete isolation. Plants that exist nowhere else, frogs found on one peak and never another. The Pemon have lived here for 10,000 years, seeing these mountains not as geology, but as homes of Mawari spirits who control rain and rivers. Walking Canaima feels like stepping into the planet's rough draft. Precambrian rock beneath your feet. Air filtered through millions of acres of untouched rainforest. Howler monkeys announce dawn. Toucans flash through canopies. This isn't a park with trails and signs. This is raw earth, stubbornly wild. "350 islands scattered across Caribbean water, so clear it looks fake. Turquoise shifting to sapphire, where the shelf drops into nothing. Most islands are uninhabited, just sand and mangroves bent by trade winds. Gran Roque, the main island, is a fishing village where painted houses cluster around narrow harbors. Life moves to tides, not clocks. Fishermen leave before dawn. Beaches have names only locals know: Madriski, Kraski, Franciski. White sand so fine it squeaks, pulverized coral that doesn't stick to skin. Water stays waist-deep for hundreds of meters, warm as breath. Beneath the surface, coral gardens sprawl. Brain corals the size of cars. Green turtles glide past. This is one of the few Caribbean reefs still healthy, protected since 1972. At sunset, the water turns molten gold. Someone always plays guitar in the village square as pelicans settle for the night. Sheer cliffs rise 400 meters vertically from jungle, a sandstone fortress built by forces that predate imagination. The summit plateau stretches 31 square kilometers, mostly shrouded in mist. This is where Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana meet, though borders mean nothing to a mountain 2 billion years old. The Pemon call it Roraima, the stump of a mighty tree that once bore all the world's fruits. When the tree fell, the stump remained, forever weeping. That grief manifests as constant rain sweeping the summit. Reaching the top takes 2 days through cloud forest, across swollen rivers, up slopes where roots form staircases. The final ascent follows a narrow ramp, the only path up, more crack than root. The summit is alien. Black rock twists into impossible shapes. Quartz crystals jut from ground, like frozen lightning. This is Earth, before it learned subtlety. Mangrove channels twist through turquoise shallows. Morrocoy's cays rise barely above sea level. White sand, beaches backed by coconut palms, bent permanent by wind. The water here is bathtub warm, clear enough to count fish from the shore. Pelicans dive bomb the surface, hitting hard enough to send up spray. Frigate birds hang motionless overhead, their forked tails acting as rudders. The park protects both marine and coastal ecosystems, coral reefs fringing every island. Snorkeling here means drifting over gardens of elk horn and brain coral parrotfish crunching through limestone, angelfish weaving between sea fans. At low tide, sandbars emerge, connecting islands that seem separate at high tide. Locals wade between kais, carrying coolers and beach chairs, knowing exactly when the sand will appear and when it will vanish again. Sunset turns everything orange. The water glows. Boats anchor in perfect stillness as night erases the horizon. The Orinoco River doesn't end, it dissolves. Splitting into countless channels, the delta sprawls across 40,000 square kilometers of waterways, islands, and flooded forest. This is one of Earth's last true wildernesses, a labyrinth where anacondas, longer than canoes, patrol muddy banks. Jaguars leave paw prints in soft earth. Pink river dolphins surface briefly, their curved backs breaking the current before vanishing again. The Warao people have lived here for thousands of years, building homes on stilts above water that rises and falls with tides. Their name means canoe people. Water is their highway. Villages are accessible only by boat, hours from anywhere modern maps would call civilization. The jungle here is impenetrable without a guide. Roots twist into nets, vines hang thick as arms. At night, caiman eyes glow red in flashlight beams, dozens of them lining the banks, patient and still as driftwood until something moves too close. Sand dunes in the tropics. Médanos de Coro rises from flat coastal plains. Golden hills sculpted by wind into shapes that shift daily. Some dunes reach 40 meters high, their crests sharp as knife edges. Walking them feels like crossing an ocean frozen mid-wave. The sand is hot enough to burn bare feet by midday. Wind constantly rearranges the surface, erasing footprints within hours. This desert sits right next to the Caribbean, creating one of Venezuela's strangest contrasts. Drive 5 minutes and you're at the beach. Turn around and you're staring at Sahara-style emptiness. The dunes formed over thousands of years from sand carried by trade winds and ocean currents piling up into this landlocked desert. At sunset, the sand turns every shade of gold and amber. Shadows stretch impossibly long. Occasionally, wild goats appear on distant ridges, their silhouettes stark against glowing sand. Then night falls and the desert becomes cold, proving that extremes are Venezuela's default setting. The Warairarepano cable car climbs from Caracas chaos to Avila National Park silence in 18 minutes. The city sprawls below, a concrete sprawl filling the valley between mountains. Then the cabin rises, and suddenly you're above it all. Trees replace buildings. The temperature drops. At the top, El Avila Peak stands at 2,700 meters, high enough for clouds to settle in the forest. Trails wind through humid mountain jungle. The Caribbean is visible to the north, a blue line beyond green ridges. To the south, Caracas continues to spread, but from this height, the noise doesn't reach, only wind and bird calls. Hotel Humboldt sits near the summit, a modernist structure from the 1950s that's been abandoned and renovated multiple times. Its Art Deco facade looks surreal against jungle backdrop. On clear days, hikers reach the peak for sunrise, watching light flood the valley as the city wakes far below. This is escape without leaving city limits, urban and wild in uncomfortable proximity. A German village dropped into Venezuelan cloud forest. Colonia Tovar sits at 2,000 meters elevation, surrounded by pine trees and perpetual mist. Founded in 1843 by immigrants from Germany's Black Forest, the town preserved its architecture, language, and traditions for over a century in near-total isolation. Even today, houses have steep pitched roofs, wooden balconies, and flower boxes overflowing with geraniums. Bakeries sell strudel and Black Forest cake. Restaurants serve bratwurst and sauerkraut. German is still spoken by older residents. The effect is disorienting. You're in South America, but the buildings insist you're in Bavaria. The climate helps the illusion. Temperatures stay cool year-round. Fog rolls through streets every morning. Strawberry farms surround the town, their rows climbing steep hillsides. Visitors come for the oddity, staying for the peach preserves and homemade beer. This is cultural persistence in its purest form. A community that refused to blend in, maintaining identity through sheer stubbornness and elevation. Jagged coastline where mountains meet Caribbean water without warning. Mochima's bays are carved deep into rock, their blue water sheltered by hills that rise abruptly from the sea. No gradual beaches here, just cliffs dropping straight into depths where coral clings to underwater walls. The park protects both land and marine ecosystems, islands scattered offshore like punctuation marks. Pelicans nest on rocky outcrops. Frigate birds patrol the thermals. Beneath the surface, moray eels hide in crevices. Octopuses change color against the reef. The water shifts between emerald and sapphire depending on depth and light. Fishing villages cluster in the few flat spots between peaks. Brightly painted boats line the shores. Fishermen repair nets under palm trees while kids dive off wooden docks. The road along the coast twists constantly, offering views that make drivers forget to watch where they're going. This is Venezuela's most dramatic coastline, beauty carved by tectonic collision between ocean and mountain, neither willing to yield. The largest lake in South America, though calling Maracaibo a lake feels wrong. It's connected to the Caribbean by a strait, making it technically a bay, but locals have called it a lake for centuries, so the name stuck. 13,000 square kilometers of brackish water sitting in a depression created by geological forces still active today. Oil rigs dot the surface, their lights turning night into industrial constellation. This is where Venezuela's oil wealth began, where derricks first tapped into reserves that would reshape the nation's destiny. But Maracaibo is more than petroleum. It's also where lightning storms become spectacles. The Catatumbo lightning phenomenon occurs here, concentrated electrical storms that flash up to 280 times per hour, visible from hundreds of kilometers away. For centuries, sailors used the lightning as a natural lighthouse. The storms form where cold Andes winds collide with warm lake moisture, creating conditions nowhere else replicates. Watching it feels biblical. Sky on fire without sound, pure light. Flat grasslands stretching to horizons, interrupted only by tepuis. La Gran Sabana is Venezuela's lost world made accessible, a high plateau where the road actually goes. Driving through feels like crossing a landscape that hasn't decided what century it's in. Indigenous villages appear suddenly, thatched roof houses where Pemon families live, much as their ancestors did. Then you round a curve, and there's a waterfall, Kama Falls, or a ponwao, water dropping over ancient rock in veils of white against dark stone. The savanna grasses turn golden in dry season, green in wet. Fires sweep through periodically, part of the natural cycle that maintains the grassland. Tepuis loom on every horizon, their flat summits often hidden in clouds. This region inspired Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World, and standing here, it's easy to see why. The scale is prehistoric. The silence is immense. At night, stars appear in numbers. City dwellers forget exist. The Milky Way becomes a river of light overhead. This is Earth, raw and unfinished. Dark volcanic sand, backed by jungle that creeps to the waterline. Choroní is Henri Pitier's coastal release, where mountain roads finally descend to sea level. The beach curves gently, protected by headlands on both sides. Waves come in steady, strong enough for body surfing, but not threatening. The water is warm, salty, slightly murky from rivers that empty nearby. Palm trees lean at angles shaped by decades of wind. Local families arrive early, setting up umbrellas and coolers, staying all day. Vendors walk the sand, selling coconut water and grilled fish. The village behind the beach is small, colorful buildings pressed together on narrow streets. This was once a cacao port, shipping chocolate to the world. That history lingers in old plantation buildings, slowly being reclaimed by forest. At night, Choroní transforms. Drums echo from beachfront bars. Music drifts over water. People dance on sand, still warm from daylight sun. This is coastal Venezuela at its most unpretentious. Just beach, jungle, and people who understand that paradise doesn't require polish. The island that refused to be conquered. Margarita sits 38 kilometers off Venezuela's north coast, large enough to feel substantial, small enough to circle in a day. The Spanish arrived in 1498 and found indigenous resistance fierce enough to delay colonization for decades. Pearl diving brought wealth. Pirates brought chaos. Simón Bolívar declared Margarita Venezuela's first free territory in 1814. That independent streak remains. The island has its own character, distinct from mainland. Beaches ring the coastline. Playa El Agua stretches 4 kilometers, white sand backed by palm groves. Pampatar Bay shelters colonial fortress walls that once guarded against privateers. The interior is surprisingly arid, cacti and scrub-covering hills that rise to peaks offering island-wide views. Porlamar, the main city, is chaos by Caribbean standards. Traffic, shops, hotels crammed together. But drive 20 minutes and you're back to fishing villages where life moves slower. Boats pulled onto sand, nets drying in sun. This is Venezuela's holiday island, local families' first choice for escape. The Cave of the Oilbirds. Guácharo is one of the world's longest accessible cave systems, chambers stretching 10 kilometers into limestone mountains. But the cave's real marvel isn't size, it's sound. Thousands of oilbirds nest deep inside, nocturnal creatures that use echolocation like bats. Their calls echo through darkness, high-pitched clicks bouncing off stone walls in waves that create an otherworldly symphony. Walking into Guácharo means leaving sunlight for a world lit only by flashlights. The temperature drops, humidity rises, the path follows an underground river, its water crystal clear and cold. Stalactites hang from ceilings like frozen waterfalls. Stalagmites rise from floors in formations that take thousands of years to build 1 centimeter at a time. The oil birds emerge at dusk, thousands of them pouring from the cave entrance in dark clouds, heading into jungle to feed on palm fruits. At dawn, they return, navigating total darkness, using only sound. This is life adapted to perpetual night, thriving in conditions most creatures would find impossible. Venezuela refuses to be simple. It's a country where waterfalls vanish into mist before reaching ground, where German villages thrive in cloud forests, where lightning storms flash thousands of times per night, where beaches and deserts exist minutes apart, where mountains wear snow on the equator. The headlines will tell you about politics, about crisis, about leaders arrested and governments falling. But the land doesn't change. The tepuis still stand. Angel Falls still drops. The Orinoco still flows. Because Venezuela, the real Venezuela, was here long before Maduro, long before Chavez, long before Bolivar, long before the Spanish ever saw this coast. And it will be here long after every name in today's news becomes a footnote in history books nobody reads. This is what survives: stone, water, sky, and a beauty so fierce it doesn't need permission to exist. Subscribe to Travel Hidden Portals. The world has more secrets than headlines can contain. And we're just getting started.